Hello, everyone. My name is Jaden Bollinger, and my country is the Democratic Republic of the Congo. For those of you who don't know, the Democratic Republic of the Congo is a Central African nation with a very large population of about 112 million, and it covers about 1.5 million square miles of land in Central Africa. For comparison, the American Midwest is about 750,000 square miles. So you take the entire American Midwest, double it, and that's about the size of the Congo. It's very rich in minerals like cobalt, copper, niobium, tantalum, petroleum, industrial and gem diamonds, gold, silver, zinc, manganese, tin, uranium, coal, and also other resources like hydropower and timber. About 62% of Congolese people, about 60 million people, live on less than $2.15 a day. Primary school completion is only hovering around 75%, and 97% of 10-year-olds cannot read basic texts. So as you can see with those statistics right there, despite it being an extremely resource-rich country, that wealth does not transfer to the general population. And that is because of a long, storied history of exploitation, of exportation, and colonization, which I think is a good way to start these blogs, is by kind of starting there, getting a general grasp for Congolese history to really understand its socio-political origins. Just to start off, it was founded by Lukeni Luanimi in the late 1300s, early 1400s. It was a pre-colonial state. He was the first Mwene Congo when he was founded. It covers parts of modern Gabon, the Republic of the Congo, Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Angola. It covers mainly the coastline, and it was a highly centralized state. It was non-hereditary, and it had extreme taxation. And it was estimated to have about 3 million subjects by 1490. When the Europeans came in, namely by the Portuguese, in the late 1400s, they very quickly took advantage of the Congolese. They gave them guns, and in exchange for those guns, the Congolese would give them slaves. This was really at the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade, and the Congo became one of the main places where Europeans would come to trade for slaves. The Congo would take guns from the Europeans, expand outward, steal people in neighboring tribes and kingdoms, and sell them to the Europeans. The government of the Congo became extremely reliant on this trade to keep the country afloat. And so when slavery became less popular and the Portuguese kept meddling in Congolese affairs, the kingdom broke apart by the late 1800s. The Portuguese took the south of the country, and namely, the Belgians took control of the center of it. Now, Leopold II sent Henry Morton Stanley to trick hundreds of local tribes into signing destructive treaties to declare fealty to him. He implemented one of the most horrifying, ruthless labor systems ever in history, where rubber plantations sprang up all over the Congo in what was now called the Congo Free State, and they would have to meet certain quotas of rubber production so that they weren't mangled, essentially. If people didn't meet their quotas, they would have limbs, notably hands, chopped off as a form of very cruel punishment. The force publique, which was the police, essentially, of this state, were made up of African mercenaries, were notorious for cutting off hands, especially rebel groups. They had quotas of their own to have so many hands by a deadline because they were meant to be hunting these rebels. But oftentimes the force publique would, instead of actually hunting these rebels and collecting their hands, would target innocent civilians and take theirs because their quota didn't specify whose hands they really had to come from. An estimated 10 million people died as a result of these horrific policies by Leopold II. And this was the first time that the Congo was truly exploited by an outside power, but it would not be the last time. In 1908, the Belgian parliament directly took control of the Congo after pressures from the US and Britain to stop those horrific practices. Now, they continued forced labor in less direct forms. There were minor improvements in basic infrastructure, but most education was still only done by missions, and the Belgians kept the Congolese down by making sure they were not educated. This is why when the Belgians, or when the Congolese wanted independence in 1960, the Congo only had 30 university graduates across the whole country. In 1960, only 136 people in the whole country graduated secondary school. There was no indigenous doctors, teachers, or military officers. And at that, the country was also extremely divided. So it was a country that was very loosely unified. Although there was the Kingdom of the Congo earlier, that name was taken and morphed into something that was completely unfamiliar. They expanded very fast through the Belgians into the center of the Congo, into the center of Africa, and took in a lot of tribes that were never part of the Kingdom of Congo. And despite all of this, Patrice Lumumba came up as this up-and-coming independence leader, who was then assassinated by the US government because he had reached out to the Soviet Union for support. And because of this US involvement and also Belgian involvement in trying to make sure that this new government would be friendly to the Belgians, they propped up a person named Mobutu. Now, Mobutu was an officer in the new Congolese army and helped overthrow Lumumba. And he started the greatest system of exploitation that the Congo had seen since Leopold. He was propped up by the US, but would take all of the mineral wealth of the country for himself. He amassed $5 billion in personal wealth in the 1970s. He cracked down on political dissidents. There was endemic corruption in the country despite claiming to be a democracy. And it was also heavily reliant on foreign investment, which ceased after the fall of the USSR. After that support from the US ended at the end of the Cold War, the country began to collapse very quickly. There was no economic incentives whatsoever for people to stay there, and they got pressured into having elections in 1990, which Mobutu then rigged. This caused a rebellion, which caused the first Congo War, where Mobutu was deposed. Laurent Désiré Kabila came in control of the country, but he did so with the help of the Rwandans. And when he came into office, he appointed a lot of Rwandans into those positions. And after that, the Congolese people began to see him as a puppet of the Rwandans, so he kicked them all out. So Rwanda invaded with the help of Burundi and Uganda. And then Kabila fought them off with a bunch of other alliances with Angola, Namibia, the CAR, and others. This is extremely symbolizing all of this conflict. I could go into an entire rant about this alone. Well, it just got very complicated, to say the least. About 5.4 million people are estimated to have died in the Second Congolese War. Laurent Désiré Kabila died in this conflict, and his son took power in 2001. Now, eventually, the Rwandans pulled back. They lost the conflict, but many of those rebel groups that sprang up in the east of the country during the conflict are still around today, which is one of the main reasons that the Congo has stayed so poor. Now, Kabila stayed in power until 2019, when he was, for the first time in Congolese history, democratically voted out of office. Felix Tshisekedi, in the first peaceful transition of power ever in the country's history, took control in 2019. He has been renegotiating trade deals with China that were made in the early 90s and early 2000s, or the late 90s and early 2000s, but is hindered by a lack of majority in the parliament. And so the Congo, in many ways, is still in this today a failing, if not a failed state. They have continued problems with state in a state. At first it was Katanga declaring its independence during the crisis with Mobutu. Then there was the M23, which is still active in the east of the country today, claiming land for Tutsis. And they still can't provide basic public goods to the people. We are seeing improvements, though, with 8.6% growth in 2022, which is mainly fueled by the mining and services sector, and is well above average global growth. But there still needs to be so many reforms in the Congo. They need better taxation system, increased mining regulations because there's still a lot of child labor going on, checks on foreign influence, community-based decision-making, increases in education, more infrastructure investment, anti-corruption policymaking, and pushes for ethnic reconciliation because there is still lots of ethnic divide in the Congo. I know this video is going a little bit long, but trying to cover this first part of Congolese history is very important, and I wanted to cover all of the main aspects of it. In following blogs, I think I'm going to take some of you through some of the more nuanced current issues in the Congo today, namely the M23 group, a more in-depth look at the Congo wars, and also ways that the Congo moving forward can really do better for all of its people.